This episode is brought to you by Progressive.
Are you driving your car or doing the laundry right now? Podcasts go best when they're bundled with another activity, like Progressive home and auto policies. They're best when bundled too.
Having these two policies together makes insurance easier and could help you save. Customers who save by switching their home and car insurance to Progressive save over $775 on average.
Quote a home and car bundle today at progressive.com.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $779 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states.
Hello, and welcome back to Chasing Excellence, a show about chasing what truly matters. My name is Patrick Cummings. Thank you so much for joining us. This time around, we've got a conversation that I was thinking about recently. We just got through the Summer Olympics. We just got through the CrossFit Games. And when those events happen, I always have the same thought, which is, man, this is a lot of pressure for these athletes who work so hard over the course of either a year or the course of a couple years. And there's so much riding on this one weekend or this one event, and this so much anticipation and so much pressure and so much riding on the results. And as I was watching, again, the games and the Olympics, I remembered a conversation that Ben and I had a few years ago about perfectionism and about athletic perfectionism and how athletes have to fight against the sometimes natural urge to want things to be perfect and to hold themselves up to a degree of perfectionism that isn't realistic. And so given that we just came out of the Olympics and the Games, I wanted to reshare this episode because I like doing that. I like going back through the archives and bringing back some conversations that Ben and I have had in years past. We've been doing the show since 2015 or 2016. So lots of good stuff in the archives. If you're new, relatively new to the show, a lot of conversations that you've likely never scrolled all the way back to. And so I like to bring them back up to the surface. So before we jump into it, just real quick, chasingexcellence.email. If you're not on the free newsletter list, jump on. It's the easiest and best way to get your questions into future episodes. We love answering your questions in episodes. And so chasingexcellence.email is the way to do that. We send out a couple emails a week. One of those emails will always have a link to a form. You can ask your questions. We'll do our best to get them into future episodes. While you are there, if you are so interested, join us in the Chase Club. It's our premium membership. You'll get ad-free episodes, additional content. We're just getting through our most recent book club. We've got some other things in the works that I'm really excited about. So all that happens, chasingexcellence.email. Link is in the show notes for easy clickability. Thank you again for being here. Let's jump into this conversation around perfectionism. Today, we're going to talk about something. It's been something that's popped up once or twice, just as I've been kind of reading stuff, paying attention to stuff. And it struck me as perhaps worth a conversation. One, I just kind of randomly, this was, I have a little article up here. When was this? In March, early March, I think. There was a soccer player at Stanford University. Her name was Katie Meyer. And she killed herself. And this came as a shock to everybody. And this isn't really what we're going to talk about, but this is just kind of part of one of the triggers. So I just wanted to kind of lay it out as context. And one of the things that they believe, that her parents believed, we're saying nobody saw this coming. They didn't expect it. There wasn't like all these warning signs. As far as I can tell, as far as anybody can tell, Katie Meyer was a wildly successful athlete. She was at Stanford, so clearly a bright young lady. And so one of the things their parents said afterwards was that there was all this anxiety and stress to be perfect, to be number one, that they believed was some part of the source as to perhaps what happened. And so that was kind of in the back of my head. And then we had a good chat with Dr. Nate Zinsser. I have his book here, Confident Mind. And one of the things in his book, he had this, I think he called it like the 4 pillars of human performance or something like that. And we touched on it just very, very briefly in our conversation with him. But one of the pillars, the second one was, this idea of embracing imperfection, right? And I've actually just got a little marker from the book here. It says it's the negative reaction you have to your human imperfection and not the imperfection itself that drains your mental bank account and prevents your first victory. And so those two things kind of coming together at roughly the same time just got me thinking about your take and your experience in working with athletes high-level athletes and everybody kind of on their way to being a high-level athlete, and how you have seen some of them deal with this idea of perfection, how you've seen some of them maybe get the best out of that idea of perfection, of that pursuit of perfection, how maybe you've seen some of them fall victim to the downsides of chasing perfection. And so I don't really know where this conversation is going to go, but I just think I'm really curious your thoughts on your experience with chasing perfection, this having just this goal and the anxiety that comes with chasing something as elusive as impossible as perfection.
So it's terrible that ended up in the tragedy that did with Katie, but it brings to light something that needs to be talked about. And I think that more people are talking about it now than they were before. And to your point, it's that chasing up perfection, but we all kind of have this background knowledge that perfection is unattainable. Like, it doesn't exist. As Dr. Nate Zinsser said, you can't deny the imperfections of humanity. It's like we are all imperfect in numerous different ways. And there's a reason that we call this show Chasing Excellence, not Chasing Perfection.
Right.
It's Vince Lombardi saying that we will chase perfection with everything we have. And in that, knowing that perfection is completely unattainable and impossible, but in that pursuit, we will harness excellence. I think that Lombardi's approach is misguided, because we've seen at the biggest extremes the tragedies that could have. But then along the way, what Nate Zinsser is talking about as well is every time you fall short of that perfection, which will be every single time, even if you're excellent as she was, it's not enough. And this not enough thing is what eats people up inside, and it can destroy. It can do anything from hinder to destroy. And sometimes it just puts a little imaginary glass ceilings that we can't bust through. Other time it just hinders our growth. Other times it turns us into monsters that eat ourselves, and to the point where sometimes it ends in someone taking their own lives. I'm a big fan. We have a principle in our business, which is stolen from Sheryl Sandberg of Facebook, which is done is better than perfect. And I think that, I know you're a big fan of Seth Godin, and his whole thing is ship it.
Yep.
Like, it's never going to be perfect. What matters is that you've done something and accomplished it. We also use this internal method that's been borrowed from the Lean Startup, Eric Ries, I think.
Rees or Rice.
Rice, one of them. We'll figure out how to pronounce people's last names at some point on the show. And the whole thing came from the software industry of Silicon Valley, and it's build, measure, learn.
Yep.
And the old methodology used to be like, make it perfect as you possibly can before it's shipped, before it goes to the market. That's for automobiles, it's for televisions, it's for movies, because you don't get another chance to iterate upon it.
Yeah.
That makes sense when you don't get another chance to iterate on it. It doesn't make sense for software, where you can put out version 2.0 in 3 days if you wanted to. It doesn't make sense for our lives. Like, the idea we need to have is have experiences, mess up, and learn a ton from those experiences. Whether you mess up, whether you fall down, whether you come up short, whether you hit your target or exceed your target, is kind of secondary to the actual purpose of our lives, which is to have experiences and learn from those experiences. That is how we all grow, evolve, and move humanity forward, is by doing that. And what can end up happening if you put perfection as, this is fixed mindset, growth mindset stuff, if you put perfection as the benchmark for where you pass the test, everything below perfection is a fail. If you're constantly failing along the way, you're not going to jump into the arena. You're going to be on the sidelines. You're going to be a bystander. You're going to be watching life happen, because you're so petrified to go up into anything that you know you're going to come up short with, which is, in the long spectrum of our lives, so numerous we can't even count. If you try to live your life in a bubble where you're always going to be perfect, you're never going to leave the house. So I think I've fallen victim to this for a long time in my life. Whether you call it fixed mindset or perfectionism, or fear.
Yeah.
To me, it's all the same thing. And I for sure had that in so many different areas, from being afraid to be social, to asking the girl out, to taking the leap into something that I didn't think I'd be good at, like a certain sport, just to go and participate in it. And I think that in today's society, with the exposure we have to other people's highlight reels on social media, this idea that people live these perfect lives eats us up even more so than it did when I was going through this, and when I was so sensitive to my own insecurities in the 80s and 90s.
There's something uniquely challenging about an athletic pursuit as it relates to this question. And I don't know exactly what that is. And I think maybe it's part of what I was curious about your take on, in the sense of, let's use CrossFit as an example. One event is the year for these high level athletes. You got one weekend, everything rides on that weekend. And so to be imperfect in that moment, or to have moments of imperfection, which of course everybody does, but to really be faced with those moments of imperfection of, if I'd done that rep, if I hadn't failed that rep, I'd made that rep, I would have got fourth place. If I got fourth place, like all these the chain of events, our imperfections as athletes seem so much louder, so much more obvious. And because there's the fixed nature of sport where you won or you lost, and you've only got so many chances at winning and losing before you're just done playing the game, right? Whether it's CrossFit or golf or whatever the sport might be. How do you help others navigate everything you just said, but in a context of I get life is full of experiences and I'm going to learn from this and I'll be better. When I'm 40, I'll look back on this and I'll be so glad I struggled with that. When it's I got a 24-year-old athlete and we all know that you've got 2 more years of competing at this level, and you just missed the rep that got you that, whatever the example might be. How do you navigate it in that environment or that specific arena where they're showing up, they're ready to go, but imperfection is so much louder there and so much easier to let it gnaw at you. You got a whole year to think about that rep you missed. How do you let that build you and not break you?
That's why sport is such a great teacher.
Yeah.
If our goal is to continue to learn, grow, and evolve, sport is that ultimate teacher, because there is a scoreboard. There is such immediacy. It is so loud. You know when you made a mistake. A lot of times in life, we don't know if we made a mistake. We gossip about somebody behind their back, but no one's calling us out on that.
No penalty. There's no penalty flag.
There's a yellow flag that's thrown when you make a mistake, when you have a pass interference that's going to cost your team the game. So that's why sport is so amazing, and it is this valuable teacher. And I can remember talking to my aunt a long time ago, she's an academic, and she's like, sport is such a waste of time. And I didn't have a good argument back then, but it's stuck with me for a long time. I was like, I don't think it is, but I just don't know why. And she's like, it doesn't prepare you for anything else in life. It's not, you're not learning better arithmetic. You're not learning to be a better writer. You're not learning to, memorize history or whatever it is. So sport is just for the enjoyment of the moment. And oh my God, is it ever the opposite of that? I believe that you can learn all of life's greatest lessons through sport. So the answer to your question lies in exactly that. What we do is we rely on all the exact same principles that we talk about all the time on this podcast, which is the things that have become almost so commonplace that we talk about them that they kind of lose their value at a certain time. But tell me what it is that you have control over. Okay. Everyone understands this at a fundamental level, but don't bring it into practice. It's only when you operationalize this into your life that it matters. If you just have this as a theory, as a concept, we haven't done a whole lot. It's better than not having a concept at all. At least you have the awareness that it exists somewhere, but it's only until you hold yourself to the fire of actually putting this into your life by saying, I no longer have control over that. And owning it, really owning it. It sounds too simple. It's really hard to do. You let it go. That's what it is. If you hold on to that, you're carrying around an extra it's called baggage.
Yep.
An extra weight vest, chains, you're slowing yourself down. You cannot progress. And this is like a year to a year thing. Obviously, like, okay, after a few months, I can let that go.
Yep.
But what about when you get called for a no rep and everyone else is advancing past you? You're now a round down from, you have to learn to let it go in that moment. And this is why, we had Stephen Kotler on, he talked about a flow state.
Yep.
A flow state is, there is no judgment.
Yep.
This is what we're trying to, if we could all live in this state where there is no judgment. It's not that there's no thoughts. Thoughts are okay.
Yep.
It's when you're judging along the way. When you lay that good or bad upon it, now all of a sudden, this is going to pull you away from present moment. Because in this present moment, there is no good or bad, but thinking makes it so. What we need to do is just try to pull back. Principle number 2. First one, is it under my control or is it not? If it is not, we got to let it go. And then from there is, am I projecting out and judging? Am I trying to lay value on what this means later on down the road? So Tom Brady throws an interception in the Super Bowl. If he projects out to what this means for the rest of the game, he's now going to perform less than he would have otherwise.
Yep.
You cannot perform as well in a negative or even as in a positive state as you can in a flow state.
Yep.
In a flow state, there is no good or bads. Now that takes some practice, because those things that set you off, that get you knocked down, are called triggers. Triggers come in a good way or a bad way. And the trigger could be a no rep, a penalty, you finish in last place in an event, you get knocked outside the top 10,
Yep.
whatever it is.
Yep.
A trigger could also be the opposite, which you win an event.
Yeah.
The judge gives you miscounts and gives you 5 extra reps, and now all of a sudden you're ahead. And all of a sudden you go like, woohoo, that's better than the opposite. It's definitely better than the opposite.
Yep.
But what we want to do is get to a place where those triggers aren't affecting us as much. And we need to make sure, as Zinzer talks about, if we have a negative and we feel ourselves, we become aware of that. That's the trick. So all these principles that we talk about in real life are the same principles we talk about with our elite athletes. Control versus control, stay present, don't judge, become aware of your thoughts so they can help control your emotions, which will lead to a physiological response, either stress-induced closing up or positive-induced opening up, which will lead to a performance gain or a performance detriment. That's why these teams go on these runs in these basketball games.
Yep.
Because they start feeling good and then all of a sudden they start feeling bad. But if you just stay, practice, non-judgmental, Kobe Bryant, pretty darn good at this.
Yep.
Michael Jordan, pretty darn good at this. Michael Phelps, pretty darn good at this. The teams that are able to just kind of stay where they are. And it takes, just like getting better at thrusters, pull-ups, running, and rowing, it takes practice.
Yep.
You can't just get to the games and go like, I'll turn it on there and I'll just ignore the noise when I get there.
Right.
We have to learn and practice this all along the way. And the biggest one is awareness. It's an understanding when you're getting pulled down on it so you can get yourself back on track.
We're going to jump right back into this conversation in just 2 minutes, but let's say thanks to a few sponsors first. We're brought to you this time around by OneSkin. Have you noticed your skin feeling a bit tired after all that summer fun? I hate to break the news if you haven't noticed, but summer's basically over. Sorry. If you're looking to refresh and rejuvenate, OneSkin is here to help. Known as the world's first skin longevity company, OneSkin tackles aging at the root cause, ensuring your skin behaves, feels, and looks younger. Unlock healthier skin today with OneSkin. Get 15% off your purchase at oneskin.co and use the code EXCELLENCE. That's how you'll get the discount. Their products feature the groundbreaking OS01 peptide, specifically proven to reduce senescent cells, which are a major contributor to skin aging. Imagine reversing the biological age of your skin by years. In fact, a 12-week clinical study showed that OneSkin's OS01 face product improved skin health markers and reduced wrinkles in 87% of users. This fall, as nature transforms, let your skin undergo its own transformation with OneSkin's powerful products. Not only will you see the difference, but you'll feel it as well. Healthier skin is just a step away. If you're ready to take your journey to healthier skin, visit oneskin.co. Use the code EXCELLENCE for 15% off. That's oneskin.co with the code EXCELLENCE. Make sure you let them know you heard about them from us. Age healthier with OneSkin, because we've only got one body and one skin. We're also brought to you this time around by Qualia Life. Have you heard about Senolytics yet? These ingredients, discovered less than 10 years ago, are being hailed as a major breakthrough for promoting healthy aging and enhancing your physical prime. That's why we love Qualia Senolytic here. Learn more by visiting qualialife.com/excellence. That's QUALIA life.com/excellence for up to 50% off. Use the code excellence at checkout for an additional 15% off. As we age, our bodies accumulate senescent cells, also known as zombie cells. That should basically tell you all you need to know. These cells don't serve a useful function anymore and can cause symptoms of aging like aches, slow workout recoveries, and sluggish energy. Qualia Senolytic helps eliminate these old cells, much like pruning dead leaves off a plant, allowing the rest of your cells to thrive. What's amazing is you only need to take it 2 days a month. Just set a calendar reminder for yourself. It's easy. Plus, the formula is non-GMO, vegan, and gluten-free and comes with a 100-day money-back guarantee. I've personally experienced higher energy levels and feel years younger since starting to take it. So resist aging at the cellular level and try Qualia Senolytic. Visit qualialife.com/excellence for up to 50% off. Use the code excellence at checkout for an additional 15% off. It's also available at select GNC locations near you, so check it out there as well. Okay, let's get back into this conversation about perfectionism. What is the allure of perfectionism? Why does it have such a hold in your mind on athletes, but really kind of anybody? Like, I don't think it's specific, obviously, to athletes, but is there some safety in perfectionism? Is there like I always think about, like, what are we getting out of this? What are we getting out of this thing that is obviously negative, or at least more often than not negative, right? And so I think about complaining. Well, what do we get out of complaining? Why do we keep doing it? In what ways is it making us feel safer or more comfortable? And so the same question to perfectionism, like, what is it there that we think it's doing, and then we're kind of just closing our eyes to what it's actually doing?
It's all based off of feeding the ego. Mm-hmm. So whether it's talking about complaining, as you said, the reason human beings complain is for two reasons. It's either to gain control over an uncertain world.
Yep.
The world is uncertain. We hate that as human beings. So we complain about it. We complain about the weather, which we have no control over. We complain about politics, which we have very little control over. We complain about the neighbors and the teachers and society and the whatever it is. So by complaining about it, we're gaining some sense of control, like internally. The ego goes like, yeah. And the other side of that is when you complain about other people, you're pushing them down. There's no faster, easier way to elevate your ego than diminishing others. When you complain about anyone in opposition, that's the best way to do that. Perfectionism is doing the exact same thing, because what they're not seeing the negative effects. Just like the complainers don't see the negative effects. They're just going like, no, this is like, it is cold outside. I'm just stating facts, man. Like, okay, but you're not serving yourself, and that's what they don't see. It's the hidden costs of it. Perfectionism, they go, I'm trying to be perfect. When I'm perfect, there's no faults. If there's no faults, my ego can't take a hit anywhere. It's the ultimate armor. I am bulletproof. I can't be hurt. I am unshakable. I get all the awards, the accolades, the attention. All of it is going to happen when I am there. But the problem is, just like the complaining, is you're just creating this completely negative state, putting off all the wrong vibrations out. We are nothing but, okay, let's go here for a second. We are nothing but vibrations. That's literally, so Newtonian physics was all about, like, you're made up of matter. It's matter, right? Okay, but when we drill down into that, quantum physics, when you get down to the quantum level of it, if you look at yourself, you see a bunch of cells. When you dial that down, you see a bunch of DNA. When you dial that down, you see a bunch of atoms. When you dial that down, you see nothing. You see space. There's nothing. There's inside of an atom, it's just all space. It's just emptiness. It's all just a bunch of vibrating waves. That's all it is. If the size of a proton was the size of an apple, the next closest electron would be the size of a grain of salt, a lot smaller, and it'd be 2 kilometers away. That's how much space is inside of us. All that space is affected by your mood, by your energies, this is why like complaining matters. This is why you striving for perfection and never getting there. It's negative, is going to destroy you. We have to embrace realities, the harsh realities sometimes, that we're going to let up goals.
Yep.
This is, if you're a soccer goalie, and Zinsser talks about this in his book, if you are a soccer goalie, the first thing you have to recognize is that there's going to be 90% of the games you're not going to shut them out. Letting goals go past you is got to be a regular, especially if you're like a female lacrosse goalie.
Yeah.
Like my daughter plays Division I lacrosse, and the scores are like, 21-17.
Yeah.
So 21 times during that game, they need to turn around and pull the ball out of the net and give it back to the referee. You have to get really good at recognizing what this is. If you're a tennis player, you're not going to win every point. If you're whatever it is in athletics, there's going to be, no one goes through a basketball game without committing a foul. A team. No team goes without committing a team foul. You're going to have turnovers. You're going to miss shots. Like this understanding of this reality is actually the thing that creates it's the opposite of what most people think. Understanding the realities of the faults and the misses is the thing that actually creates the highest level of competitiveness. What we want in life is not people that are weighing their whole existence on a pass-fail, a perfection, X's and O's, ones and zeros, binary, perfectionism or failure, and realizing that it is this messy thing in between, and what actually matters is not the scoreboard, not the circumstances, the goal went past you, not any event that is outside your control, but only, this is the highest level of competitiveness, is am I working on my character to respond to those circumstances. 3 goals went in a row. 3 goals against us now we're down 3-0 in the championship game. From there, the only thing that matters is how we respond in a competitive fashion to that circumstance. I think of it in terms of like a XY axis. On the vertical, you have the event that's happening. On the horizontal axis, you have character. So you have circumstances and you have character. What the least competitive people do, including perfectionists, is they focus solely on the circumstances. So they're in the high left-hand corner. What we want to be is in the low right-hand corner, where we don't focus at all on the circumstances. The circumstances don't matter to us whatsoever. It doesn't matter if it rains. It doesn't matter if we're down by 20. The score will take care of itself. What we have to focus on is how we are responding, our character. Think of the Navy SEALs going to kill bin Laden. And the very first thing that happened was their helicopter crashed. Imagine if they were so focused on circumstances. Like, damn it, Billy, you crashed it. What are we? They're not.
We're going home.
We're going home. Like, no, there goes perfection. It was not a perfect mission. It wasn't. They're so dialed into how to respond to events. This is our lives. When I say we want to learn from this is the purpose of our lives, it's not what you said, like, okay, I'm 22 and when I'm 40. No. It's 22 and right then we're adapting. Right then, it's not trying to gain the lessons out of it. The evolution, the growth is the character that happens right then in that moment. Now, a lot of us takes perspective. We have to wait a day, a week, a month, a year, or until we're 40 to look back and go like, oh, actually, I learned a lot from that. What we all want to be doing is hindsight in the present moment. That's perspective. Right now, can I see and as it's happening, when your wife says something to you, or your kid says something to you, or boss says something to you, or read something on social media that triggers you in a certain way, can you become aware of that? And then in that moment, recognize that it's up to your character, not the circumstances, not what they said, how they acted, how they behaved, or how you were affected, but how are you going to bring your best self to that moment, even though that's happening? And when we do this, this yields the greatest competitor, because what you're now looking for is those circumstances that challenge you. Because if you have homeostasis, if you have comfort zone, you never get to work on the character traits. While you're watching Netflix, having your bowl of cereal,
Yes.
your vice, your guilty pleasure, when you're doing that, like you're in pleasure mode. Like you're good. You're all good. It's when you're doing that and your kid spills the cereal and then change the channel, how to respond to that moment right then and there. When you flipped out of pleasure mode into challenge mode. And that's what true competitors are. True competitors are, this competitiveness thing has been totally misunderstood. They see little Johnny crying after the Little League game after a loss and go, oh, he's just so competitive. No, he's not. He's a sore loser. That's what that is. Competitiveness is the person that wants the challenge and is actually the loss, recognizes that as the chance for a huge opportunity for growth. It's Rafael Nadal in the greatest tennis match ever playing, halfway through in the third rain delay for over an hour against Roger Federer. His dad coming in and trying to console him because he just went down in the match. He goes, Dad, I'm good. He may win this match, but I will not lose. That's competitiveness. It's not hoping that your competitor stumbles, falls, trips, or makes mistakes. You want the best from them so you can go out and get the best out of you. That's what perfectionism is not doing. What perfectionism is doing is going like, I just want to be the best. I just want to be perfect so no one can point out any sort of anything. It's okay to make mistakes. When you make a mistake. So you asked, your original question was when somebody makes a mistake in the games and they only have this one opportunity, or in the Olympics and they only have this one opportunity. How do you get past it? This is the chance. This is a chance to do all the things we worked on. Michael Phelps diving in for winning the 100-meter butterfly, and when he dives in, his goggles fill up with water. True story, for his 18th gold medal, the one that's going to set him apart from everybody else. His goggles filled with water. What did he do? He didn't hesitate for a second. It wasn't woe is me. It wasn't weighing and measuring like, is this good or bad? It's not perfect now. It's not perfect. It wasn't that at all. Let's go. I've trained for this. I can respond to this moment.
Last question. Thinking about young athletes out there, CrossFit, golf, whatever they're out there playing. What would you do as a coach to get that athlete starting to on this path versus the perfectionism path? And maybe kind of a sub question in there is there something about the time we're living in? You kind of mentioned the everybody's highlight reel, et cetera, that makes this so much harder for a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid, I'd call them kids, today than maybe even 5 years ago, 10 years ago. How do you, as a coach, help a young athlete start in this direction and not fall victim to the trap of perfectionism?
So to answer the easier, quicker one first is, yes, I totally believe it's much harder now than it was when we were 16, 17, 100%. Just the celebration of success on social media and how you think everyone's driving a Lamborghini. Meanwhile, I just came across this stat that so it looks like everyone's a gazillionaire. Everyone makes $1 million. It looks like millionaires. It looks like $1 million is the old 100,000. Like everyone should just if you buckle down, you're going to make $1 million. And I'm going to get this stat wrong and somebody can email us or something, but it's some astronomical. We were talking about this with my neighbors the other day, how small the actual population of the world that makes $1 million. It's something like the 0.0001% make $1 million. And even in the United States, it's like not that much farther off than that. And if you make $200,000 or $300,000, you're still at this crazy levels of wealth. But society has told us that if you don't have a Lamborghini, if you don't have your own jet, if you're not, flexing left and right that you haven't made it yet.
Yeah.
And that's just not true. It's just not true at all. So I can see why perfectionism, the bar has been set so high and everyone's coming up short and it crushes them. For young athletes, first one is dispel that myth, bring a level of awareness to them. But even more so than that is celebrate challenges, especially the ones that don't end in successes. It's when your kid strikes out 3 times in Little League, gets up to the plate and has a really good at-bat. And but it's a really good at-bat. Like in baseball terms, maybe he's down quickly 0-2. He fights back to a 3-2 count, fouls off 4 balls in a row, and then strikes out swinging at a nasty splitter, like that type of thing. That's a really high quality at bat. Or he line drives it right back to the shortstop, like
solid
super
contact,
quality, awesome contact. On the score sheet, it looks like an out, but you celebrate those things. Like celebrate, as Tony Gwynn said, like Hall of Fame baseball player. After the game, he would go through in his mind the mental Rolodex of every single at bat and every single pitch. And then what he would do is then any of the bad ones, he would just file away as like those didn't exist. It's the golfer, I think it was, I'm going to get it wrong, but it's either Jack Nicklaus or Greg Norman or one of those guys. And a reporter asked him about a 3-putt that he had, about how many times he's 3-putted, which in golf is kind of like you kind of messed up. You're always supposed to make it in 2 putts.
Most people it's normal, but for a pro,
for me, it's 3 once you get within 3 feet.
That's right.
I like, but for a pro, a 3-putt is like the whole win awry. And his answer was, I've never 3-putted. And that's just it's a selective memory, and that's just it's a way to kind of like, just you don't have to dwell on the negatives. But I would, with young athletes, is really highlight the challenges where there was a good character response, regardless of what the outcome was. So even if the Patriots, when they're down 28-3 with 3 minutes left in third quarter against the Falcons in that Super Bowl, even had they not come back all the way, if I'm watching that game with my son, I am going, that's what it's about. That not like, I can't believe they lost. Like every single time you have a chance to layer in good character, regardless of outcome. It's better when the outcome is negative. That's so amazing. If you're pissed off that they lost, like, oh my gosh, what a fight they gave back to come back from that deficit when they could have just folded. And they fought for that. That's such a good character response. And kids are products of their surroundings. When you get excited about that, they will get excited about that. But if they see you only respond to the outcome at the end, which you really have very little control over, you gotta highlight the response and the way that they react to these things, not the end outcome of the wins and losses.
Thank you so very much for tuning into the show this time around. If you are not yet subscribed, wherever you happen to be listening to this, please make sure you hit the button, the follow button, the subscribe button, the hug button, whatever it takes so that you don't miss another episode. That's what we would love you to do. I mentioned this at the top, chasingexcellence.email. If you want to get on a free newsletter list, we would love it. If you want to jump into the Chase Club, we welcome you. We would love to see you there. All the links are in the show notes. Ben and I will be back soon for a brand new episode of Chasing Excellence.
Okay, it's official. We are very much in the final sprint to Election Day. And face it, between debates, polling releases, even court appearances, it can feel exhausting, even impossible to keep up with. I'm Brad Milkey. I'm the host of Start Here, the daily podcast from ABC News. And every morning, my team and I get you caught up on the day's news in a quick, straightforward way that's easy to understand, with just enough context so you can listen, get it, and go on with your day. So, kickstart your morning. Start smart with Start Here and ABC News, because staying informed shouldn't feel overwhelming.